Babble with Ben.
Welcome to the podcast, The Monster, Lachnes.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing good. Bit tired and hungry, but same old.
Tell me about it. Thanks for coming in last minute too, by the way.
Of course.
I was looking forward to having you on the show, and we got it a little bit earlier now, so it's great.
Of course, I'm here. I'm ready.
What were you? So you were just working on something before you came in here, yeah? What do you got happening?
Yeah,
coming
I was
up?
working with Jackson, my main man, obviously, and we're working on a little piece. It hasn't come into. We haven't got all the ideas sorted yet, but it should be something a bit experimental. I really like, well, recently I've been getting into more experimental things. I feel as though you got to evolve as an artist. I think everyone believes that sentiment. And I think for me personally, I'm very interested in kind of weed and like growing. So I don't want to stay the same as, a year or 2 years ago. So with my bodies of work or singles, I kind of want to gravitate to either new sounds or just interesting things, like interesting specifics of different songs that I hear, and then I want to incorporate it and mesh it all together, which I think that's how most new things get created nowadays.
You're not going to water down the red cordial of your hyperpop sound though, are you, or not?
No, it's going to be more dark. It's going to be more, I like
More
dark.
dark.
Well, yeah, I can go into what's going on with me and the hyperpop. So I am got an EP coming out, which is going to be cool. It's 4 songs. And out of these 4 songs, it was pretty much how it stemmed from was that my ex-girlfriend now, broke up with me, unfortunately. And it kind of not ended badly. Like I still, respect her, but I felt how she handled the situation was not respectful to me, because I told her multiple times, this is how I want to be treated. This is how I want you to communicate with me with the breakup. I didn't have the problem with the breakup necessarily. I knew it was kind of maybe heading that way, and it was fair enough on her behalf. But I didn't think how she navigated it was very mature on her behalf, and it just made me really feel like shit. And I didn't say a lot of the things I wanted to say. It was very unsaid, and through my own kind of in the past, I didn't block my exes, and they would come into my, my pages, and I'd get upset. So I just decided, hey, I'm going to block it out. And so this EP is literally just a bunch of tracks that I didn't say to my ex.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're going to say it to 200,000 people instead?
No, it's going to be... It's going to be crazy. Like, it's still... I haven't uploaded the mixtape yet, which I'm going to do tonight, which is huge for me. Because Tonight. Because I just got the cover art back. I know. So it looks dope as well, so I'm super excited. But
Always love your cover art. It's always good.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So it's actually got a picture of my ex on the cover. But her face is blocked out. But if she sees it, she's going to know it's her. So I'm a little bit nervous, but at the same time, it's really emotional for me because the breakup was really hard on me, as anyone goes through a breakup understands. But just not being able to say the words that I wanted to say to her really, really impacted me a lot. And having this art, this body of work where it kind of talks about this is really emotional for me. So it's been a bit of a weird couple of days, just, it's been happy and also sad because it's like an end of a chapter and kind of processing those emotions again of the breakup. So
yeah, I can see that too. Like, I think, a lot of people find inspiration for their music from emotional trauma, but it can be, you do hear about people that won't perform songs live. I mean, for example, Maynard from Tool won't perform a song called H because it's not an emotion that he feels anymore, and it's too traumatic for him to bring them up anymore. And so I really respect the fact that you're sharing these emotions for people, you know what I mean? And I think it must be a good therapy for you as well, by the sounds of it.
It is good therapy. at the same time, it's obviously still hurts. So I guess we'll see what happens in a year, 2 years, how I feel about it. But yeah, I've got a gig as well, which is going to be cool. I'm got hired to be a part of this kind of like festival thing. So that's
Great.
happening on the 23rd. So it's perfectly timed between the release of my first single and then the mixtape.
Fantastic. What's the name of the festival? What's the gig?
It's called, I actually forgot what it's called, but it's something for
We'll
kids.
find it before the 23rd, yeah.
But yeah, it's a great opportunity, and how that opportunity actually arose is kind of interesting. I kind of used my noggin a little bit. So I knew there's organizations for artists such as Freezer, the local communities run. And I reached out to one of them and I said, hey, do you need any help, volunteers? And they said, hey, we would love to have you on board for the St. Kilda Festival. So I got to be a part of that. Artist liaison, which is, I loved every moment of it. So I know quite a little bit. I'm not going to say I know everything about Melbourne music culture, but specifically hip hop and a bit of pop, rap and pop. I know a little bit about the what's going on in Melbourne. So there was a bunch of artists actually a part of St. Kilda Festival that I already previously knew. So it was just so exciting to see those guys up on stage and be able to kind of, not confirm, but, base how do I perform in comparison to these guys. And they performed amazingly. There's so many great Australian, artists around, and it was just great to see local artists do their thing on the stage. And I loved every moment.
Who did you find on the stage that was inspirational that day?
I think all of them. I want to say all of them. I think Ijale, he's a Melbourne-based rapper. You could box that, I guess. Amazing. Freak Club, amazing. They're like they're saying like more hip hoppy, but they also do a bit of pop. They're like a collective, really cool. George Alice, huge one. She has about like 250K views on Spotify. Not like her monthly listens are that. So it's huge. She was a huge artist. She was super nice. She came up, we talked. It was really good, and it was just a great experience to get connections. And then through that organization, they hired me for this gig. So that's how I got the connection. I didn't just reach out to whatever. It was just based off, hey, if I do this thing, I know I'm going to be able to get connections here, here, here. And then from that, they're going to be like, possibly. It's all just a roll of the dice, you know what I mean? I didn't know that they would ever come back and talk to me, but here we are. I'm getting that opportunity. It's for, performing for kids. And it's going to be, I think, it's going to be really enjoyable. I'm going to be able to perform my mixtape for the first time. And I think that's going to be a huge emotional highlight for me. So we'll see what happens.
So you think there's a big value in networking by the sounds of things, hey? Not expecting to come straight in as a headliner, but sort of getting to know who the players are, what they're looking for.
Exactly. Which is, I've been doing that for a while. I've known that's the way you go. And I've just been looking at other ways to kind of get my foot in the door, because we all know how hard the industry is, especially in Melbourne when there isn't really a person with a torch in regards to hip hop. Like, for instance, if you think hip hop in Australia, you think Sydney.
Really? Yeah.
So Sydney, they've got all the artists that are popping. There's not really, you think Melbourne, you go, name one big Melbourne artist that's rap, hip hop.
Who are the big Sydney artists that you would
you would
admire?
say, so there's one called Blessed. You've
Yes.
got one, there's also Brisbane as well. Brisbane's pretty big. So Nerve is up there in Brisbane. You got Sydney, you got Blessed, you got 1-4, you got, I think 1-4 is Sydney, hopefully. You also got, there's also a bunch of different, that aren't rap, but most people or artists go to Sydney because that's where the record labels are. That's where Triple J is. So a lot of that is coming from there. Obviously, there's more. I just can't think off the top of my head. But, you've got those pretty big artists up in Sydney, which is cool, which is dope. But there's not really much in terms of Melbourne. So it's a bit hard for artists that are up and coming to kind of make a name for themselves.
I think my Melbourne references must be decades out of date, because I would think of someone like 1200 Techniques. But
that's old.
That's a long time ago. Hilltop Hoods?
Yeah.
Are they Melbourne or are they Sydney, those guys?
I haven't researched too much
Yeah.
into them. I don't
Bliss and
know.
Esso?
Bliss and Esso, they're still kicking around, chilling it. They're still Husky. I think his name's Husky.
Yeah.
Snow. There's a bunch of like, those are like, so there's different branches of Australian hip hop. You've got kind of like the, that's kind of like, it's kind of like, not Eshe rap. It's definitely not Eshe rap, but it's like kind of, you know what I'm trying to say? And then there's more like hip hop from America. So Bless, the one that I've been really getting into, he's Sydney. He's really good. He does more traditional kind of hip hop blend from America than this kind of, which I'm not dissing at all, because there's some really, really good, I don't know what to call it. Like, I don't want to offend people by saying that it's Eshe rap, because it's not all Eshe rap, but it's like, you know what I mean? It's like that hard, like Aussie kind of persona type thing. But there's some really, like, Husky's new album, Anti-Hero, was great. Like, I think it was a great album. And same with, a bunch of, Chillin' It has some of his tracks go hard. So, you can't, I think when you're in the Australian scene, you gotta pay respects a little bit to what is coming, and also kind of what other people are doing. You can't be too close-minded. And that's what I've kind of grown and learnt through just being able to consume local music, which I'm really passionate about. That's I want to make sure that if I don't make it as a musician, I want to be able to help musicians in Melbourne, or just in any sense, any way, or Australia, because I feel I'm just really passionate about local music and just music in general. I really just love the culture of it. I love people being able to express themselves through art, and most people I've met, obviously there's some sour grapes, but most of them are really nice people, and they've just got this great artistic vision. Some don't, but some do. Some people just want to make party tracks, and it's hard. But I mean, you've got all this encompassing, and I think it's just so awesome to be a part of, and I just want to be there for that. Whatever my part is, I don't think that I do believe in myself. I do think I'll get to a point where people will respect the name, and my art will be shown to people. But at the same time, you got to be in the mindset that might not happen, and how else can you fulfill yourself? Because I'm more than happy to just release music and no one listen to it, unless because the main thing is knowing that your music has substance to you, And if you're just releasing shit for other people, then you're not really going to get out of it long term. You're just going to get bored of it after a while. But if it actually means something to you, the music means something to you, the culture means something to you, and you're releasing and nothing's happening, it's not that big of a, after a while you don't worry about the views. You don't worry about that. You worry about the evolution of who you're going to be and what your music is going to be, really, what it represents. And that's what I've started to, I guess, understand through this EP and through the new music I'm making, is, you just got to be vulnerable. You just got to be you, in a nutshell. And marketing can be really hard. What about you? What's your?
Well, I was going to say,
music?
I think your passion is absolutely obvious, and I mean, you can hear it in your music. I can see that you're pretty active with your collabs as well. Like, I can see. I have the same sort of dilemma. I mean, I make some music. I've got some ambient stuff that's out at the moment. I am working on just some guitar-based stuff and some dance stuff. But it gets to the point where, people will always, I don't know whether you show your demos to people before you put them out on platforms. Yeah. Someone will always say, why don't you think about doing this or changing this? Or maybe what people are doing today is this, and what you are doing now is old. But I think, because when you are in the chair in front of the computer or wherever you make your music, right, when your foot's tapping and your eyes are closed and your head's just swaying, it's like, fuck it, I enjoy this. If I don't enjoy it, I don't expect anyone else is going to, right? And you just put it out. You just absolutely put it out. And I think that sounds like that's what you're doing.
I think there's a balance, right? Like, you can't just make a demo and then put it out, because it could just be dog shit. Like, let's be honest, you think, oh, this shit slaps, and then you don't, like, people have their, like, criticism has a place, right? Like, you show your friend and they're like, hey, that kind of sounds like Like it's out of key. It's just shit. And if you're like, oh, this shit sounds good, and it's out of key, and it just sounds not good, because I think there is in my opinion, there is a balance of, art can be subjective. What's the word?
There's subjective and objective.
Subjective.
Sometimes I forget which is which. I'm not going to lie.
Objective is, well, subjective. Music can be subjective, but there's just some music that you listen to and you go, that's just not good. And I reckon most people can just listen to and go, that's not what music should sound like. And I feel as though with I forgot where we were going. I forgot.
We can go anywhere you like, Lachnes.
No, but I was going to bring up a point. I think it was, now I remember. Sorry. Well, I think the main point that I was trying to make is that when you're listening to something, right, that you're making, you're thinking, this is fucking really good. Like, I really honestly believe and I feel passionate about this. Sometimes people's opinions don't matter because you know what your influences are. You know the scene around it. You know what has influenced you. And if you think you've executed that to an extent that you think is great, well, who else is like, why should someone comment on that? And because there's heaps of work where I've done where I've asked someone's opinion for, and it hasn't really helped. It's just like, I believe in this very wholeheartedly. And I think this should come out. And it's turned out great. And people have been like, fuck, this is good. And if I listened to that one person, they would have been like, I would have not released it. And then, you would never have got those people to listen to your track. So I think you got to switch off a little bit, but you got to be smart. It's like an IQ thing where you got to, like, I refer to IQ like basketball IQ, or, like, you just got to have the smarts to understand where it's applicable to your art.
Absolutely. I think there's kind of an overlap between what I like and what the people that listen to me like, and then in the middle, that's kind of the golden seam, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I was to look at your Spotify, for example, right, is the track with the most listens your favorite track?
Well, I would say most of the people that I don't have any fans. I'm going to point that out there. Like, I don't think there's consistent listeners of mine. But if people have heard my music, there are 2 tracks, yes, and they're the most viewed, yes. But I mean, that's not always the thing. Like, for me, I know most of my artists, it's not the number one song that's my favorite. And like, what about yourself? Do you have stuff up on Spotify? What's your kind of experience?
I do. I have some stuff up on Spotify. They're all sub 1,000, so they're all.
Doesn't matter.
They're all. It's stuff that I made 10 years ago for a friend. It was actually a soundtrack to a book.
Awesome.
Which was a documentation of a festival, and I do actually get a bit of a smile when someone says, oh, I really like this track, because I have a favorite. I do have a favorite. I won't tell people which one it is, right?
Okay.
But I think I would have to dig into the stats and find out which of the tracks had the most listens. But yeah, I think even if I hear stories of other artists, right, I've been reading a book by Carl Cox, who's a DJ, right?
Awesome.
And he did a collaboration with Nile Rodgers, who you might know from a collaboration with Daft Punk, Get Lucky.
Cool,
He's known for the band Chic.
Yep.
He did collaborations with Madonna.
Yep.
Carl Cox said that his favourite Chic track was, I forget the name of it, I think it was like the name of a city or a country.
Cool.
And Nile Rodgers said straight away, yeah, that's my favourite too. But it's by no means the top track in Spotify. And so I think if you were to play the game where you make your product based purely on metrics, you do lose that sense of self and maybe of soul. And it's almost like you have to compromise. It's like, okay, I know the audience likes this, but I like it too, so we're going to make more of that. Whereas if the audience is going, yeah, this is great, and I'm like, I would rather put a screwdriver in my ears than make anything like that again, then you sort of go, okay, well, Radiohead, a classic example, right? Their song Creep, it was their first huge, big song, right?
Yep.
They spent, I think, the best part of a decade not playing it.
Wow.
And it was the song that made them, right? Because they were like, nah, this song gives us the shits. We cannot sing it with conviction. Yeah. And so I think for your stuff as well, like, yeah, you find that middle ground, you find that compromise, and that's where the magic happens.
Well, I appreciate it. I think my new music is, I found a lane. I think hyperpop suits me, suits the energy, the chaoticness. And I think the new music, because when people have listened to me previously, they always go, "Oh, Interstate's my favorite." Sidelines, which no, that's fair enough. It's good. They're good songs, but I'm always kind of like, fuck, couldn't one of my new songs be your favorite? You know what I mean? It makes me think, fuck, But I mean, I think this new body of work, I've been working on it for like 4 or 5 months with different producers, and I think how I was feeling at the time really reflects that album.
With the breakup?
With the breakup,
Yeah.
yep. So I'm really, really proud of it, and I don't know where I'm going next. I think I want to
That's good.
hone in on that sound, but refine it more, make it maybe more dark. Maybe make it a bit more stripped back, a bit more kind of vulnerable, a bit more. I really like the idea of something sounding like not quite right mixed wise. Like it sounds a bit like, there's one artist called Cemetery where he's got this, literally his whole aesthetic is like overblown shit. Like but it's not to the point where it's like, this is unlistenable. This just sounds like a kid in his basement, like mixed it at home. It sounds like this actually sounds really good mixed, but just the aesthetic of it is really, Don't mind me. Is that my one ringing? I think it could be me. Should I just leave it?
If that's you, I think the cat is out of the bag at this point. Just check if it is you.
All right. Sorry about that.
We can come back to it. I can't hear it. I can hear it in my headphones. That's about it. We might edit this one out. It depends on how much of a fool I want to make the old Lachnes.
Can I call you back? Let me call you back. Yeah, give me 5. Hello? A little bit more high.
Good thing it's not Twitch.
I know, hold up. Sorry, I really apologize. Well, yeah, at least you can use this in the, sorry, I'm so sorry.
At least it wasn't me. Good thing it wasn't Jackson.
All right, too easy. We're good. Alrighty, awesome.
All right.
Sorry, we're back, baby.
We're back. We just had a technical malfunction here, a little bit of a lack of do not disturb mode. So wait a sec, Lachnes, for us old farts at home, right?
Yep.
I've heard of pop music, right?
Yes.
But I don't know what's so hyper about hyper pop. What is the difference between pop and hyper pop?
Well, let me give you a little lecture.
Yeah.
The thing is, hyperpop is a bit different to what I'm doing, but I mean, for most people, we just call it hyperpop. Hyperpop is really comes from AJ Cook, Charlie XCX, 100 Gex. I don't make that type of music. There's a bit of a difference. It's like hip hop, right? There's different umbrellas and different terms.
Oh, of course. Like house music, like rock music, like jazz.
Well, specifically, there's like subgenres. So there's like, emo rap. There's, hard gangster rap. So for hyperpop, it's just a broad umbrella. You would call it more bubblegum, like bubblegum music, like PC music for like Charlie
PC
XCX.
music?
Yeah.
As in a game soundtrack? Or?
No. It's just literally called PC music. It's just more, look it up. But it's more Charlie XCX, AJ Cook, all that type of jazz. And I would not, it's not respectable to be like, oh yeah, I make music like that, because I don't. I just don't. It's more of like an off stem, which is like what happened is that you had that, right? You had the, the high, like the Charlie XCX, and then white boys got a hold of it. Well, not white boys, but just it became a bit more melodic. It became a little bit more easy and accessible, kind of like. And then there was like an offshoot, which is just more melodic, kind of hyper pop, like and it's really cool. I really fuck with it, and I guess that's kind of the I don't know. It doesn't have like a specific name for it because people just call it hyper pop, but I like to differentiate the two because there is a bit of a difference. So I'm more classified on that other side than Charlie XCX. But it's all really cool. And what it is, the main thing is that they use really aggressive kind of sounds instead of like poppers can be, it's not in your face. You can put it on the car radio and your mum and your grandma can sing to it. This is kind of like that, but on steroids. You know, like thumping. There's a lot of like electronic. Electronic music has really influenced that genre.
No acoustic hyperpop?
I don't know. There probably is, to be honest. But yeah, so there's a lot of like, house, a lot of, different electronic music that has influenced hyperpop as well. So you could imagine it's just like a combination of like melodic phrases with like fucking breakneck beats with like, 808s that are just thumping and you're just like, fuck, this is a lot. But it's in a way that it's manageable for the listener and that it's just sounds fucking good. It's like, it's really, when it first came out, it was really experimental. It was a bit weird. People were like, what the fuck is this? There's one artist particularly called 100 Gex. They pitched up their voice.
Yes.
And people were like, what the fuck is it? I will admit, the first time I heard it, I was like, what the fuck is this? This sounds so weird. But it grows on you and you're like, actually, this fucking goes hard. So yeah, that's pretty much hyperpop. Well, my best interpretation of it, obviously, I might get things wrong, but that's for most part what my understanding of it is.
For me, I think I really became aware of what hyperpop was when Sophie died. Because I was I was late to the Sophie party.
She's very
only
good.
really knew about her after she died.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a habit of mine. Like I only got into Jeff Buckley several years after he died. I only really got an appreciation for what is her name? Back to Black.
Back to Black.
Amy Winehouse. I only got an appreciation.
Amazing.
Because when I must have been in my late 20s when Amy Winehouse died, and she had become a punchline of jokes, unfortunately.
Really?
And so, yeah, absolutely. Because
I wasn't around then, so explain more, please.
Oh, well, I think Amy Winehouse was hanging around with Pete Doherty, I think, from Baby Shambles. Like back when video was a new thing for the internet, like when YouTube was in a little box and it was using Adobe Flash, you'd see videos of the two of them smoking crack and like playing with their pet mice. And so you sort of realize that things were off the rails and she'd become a punchline, unfortunately. And so I didn't have an appreciation for her until she died, which is, I feel ashamed almost saying that. It's like now that, 10 years later, you just realize how good she was, how good at improvising she was, just how great her tone was. There was a documentary where, you would see her playing live and then you'd see the way her dad treated her. And, I think, getting back to Sophie, right? Like it was the same sort of vibe. It was like, like I'd seen these weird photoshopped covers and I'm like, why does her voice sound different every time she sings a song? And of course it's because she wouldn't sing her own songs. She would produce them and she'd get people in to sing for her. And that was kind of, I thought that was very interesting in that she had this very fluid idea, not only of gender, but of course of even appearance and sound, like the whole thing was like, I'm whatever I want to be on that particular day. And I thought that was great. And I mean, I think maybe that's, is that a part of hyperpop? It's just that sort of lack of limits, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Well, most hyperpop came from the LGBTI community. So, it's a way of expression for them. And that's why you kind of have to differentiate and make sure you kind of put the line of, I don't make the music that was for that culture. Or for that community of people, because it's a bit disrespectful to say I make hyperpop when
now I get you. Yeah.
So that's why I try and make the difference between the two and make sure it was really a liberating thing for that community. And I'm not a part of that community. I'm an ally, but I'm not a part of that community. So I can't, engross and say, I did this, I did that. You know what I mean? It's just like, I was very influenced by hyperpop and I love hyperpop and I appreciate it. And yeah, but I agree. Yeah. A lot of artists are still dying, like Juice WRLD, X, Peep. And, they're just so talented and you just go afterwards, you go, wow, their legacy and impact was just huge. And you only realize it once they're gone.
And they're dying quite young too. I mean, in my day, it was the 27 Club, but now it seems like 22, 23. Like it's
Well, it's
shocking.
it's just the drug culture, and I think like I don't hate on people for doing drugs. Like you know, people have ways of coping. I just think it's been glorified a little bit too much for that line of, and I do believe drugs are a slippery slope. People think they have it down pat. They think they can control it, but most times people that do think they're in control aren't. And that's where it kind of ends up in this bad way where you're kind of like, you're having to sell shit to get what you need. So, I stay away from drugs. So obviously my perspective isn't ingrained or in that culture. So I guess I'm a bit somewhat uneducated with a lot of the drug culture and a lot of the drug scene. So everyone can take that with a grain of salt, I can only comment for what I do know and what my own experiences are. And that is that, drugs can affect you in ways that you don't think. And you just got to be careful, like be smart about it. If you're going to do drugs, make sure you know what you're putting in your body and, where you are putting it in your body in the instance of, maybe don't do it in a syringe in a fucking local bathroom. And I'm sure people don't do that. I'm sure, but I'm just saying.
Sure they do. Don't worry.
Some do. Some. But yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, what about you? Have you had any experiences with maybe artists that you thought, fuck, they're a little bit off the rails a little bit?
Well, apart from Amy Winehouse, definitely. I mean, Jeff Buckley is a big hero of mine, and I found that it was funny because he'd already passed away by the time I got into his music, right? And it was funny because he died swimming in a river. The autopsy showed no signs of drugs in his system, and so it was just a real tragedy because it wasn't drug
induced. It was
just an accident. It was just an accident. And I mean, even before that, you do hear, like John Bonham, who was the drummer of Led Zeppelin, of course.
Yeah.
He drank himself to death, more or less. There's and it just seems to be completely prevalent in the music industry. And it's a worry, especially, when I see, I mean, it's one thing as an 18-year-old seeing a 27-year-old pass away from drug abuse. But when you're a 40-year-old and then you're watching the 27-year-old, it's just like, wow. Like, because when I was younger, like 27 seems like ages and ages and ages away. Like when I was growing up, it would always be, football players look so old, like they look like full-grown men and this sort of stuff. But now, as a 40-year-old, I'm looking at the football players and I'm like, oh, that's cute that little 23-year-old's got a nice blonde mullet. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of funny. And so, yeah, it's a different perspective. And I think, especially in Melbourne, like I definitely hear a lot of people that were leaning on various substances, whether it's weed, alcohol, shard, all that sort of stuff, right? Just to get through these lockdowns. And it seems like it has been, it's been a big sort of collective trauma. I mean, how did you find you got through the lockdowns?
It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like I'm sure I just want to preference by saying everyone probably had it collectively pretty hard, and I don't want to ever stress that my experience was worse than any other person's, but I'm just speaking from, my experience. But so I used to live at Fairfield. So I wasn't studying at Box Hill, I was studying at Fairfield. It was shit.
Is that Melbourne Polytechnic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was shit. Very shit. Not good.
I went there 12 years ago. It sounds like it's changed. Yeah.
It's not good. The problem is when you study somewhere, you want the people to be the same age. Most of them were like 40, 50. Not a problem if you're that age, of course. It's just you want to be engrossed with people that are a little bit more similar to your age, but there also can be 40 and 50-year-olds.
What were you studying? Which
music.
Music, yeah. As a producer or a performer?
Songwriting.
Songwriting, yeah. Right.
And it just wasn't a good course. So that was during lockdown, and I was staying in this small little shoebox flat, and they made it hard. So I was actually with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and they didn't want guests, which is, fair enough. But I mean, at the same time, we weren't able to see anyone. So you were allowed to have guests when you have your own home. You're allowed to have people over, your loved one. But I wasn't even allowed that for a while until I had to like sneak her in.
Absolutely.
Of course, because I just thought it was unfair. And I was very upset. I was probably the most depressed I've ever been.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were like that though. And then the year following, Box Hill, I guess it was more that when you're by yourself, living by yourself, you get lonely and you start thinking about all this shit that you could have done or what that meant or what this meant, and it just really got to me. Now thankfully I'm more busy. I'm working. I have a job that's pretty fulfilling. I'm working on music and I'm loving it more than ever. I think I'm not focused on the stats. I've only got whatever. It doesn't really matter how much views I got. It's more that the art that I'm making is meaningful to me, and that I just love making it. Like, I just love it. I love writing stuff. I love doing all of it. The whole process is fun. So I'm really loving that. But a lot of that wasn't happening during lockdown. I was working on shit. Like, I was busy as fuck with the shit because that was the only thing I could do.
Of course, yeah.
But it was hard. It was really hard. And then I guess most of my relationship actually was in lockdown. My ex-girlfriend, most of it was so I got out of school and I met her at a club 2019. I don't go to clubs, so this was very weird. And then we started talking, blah, 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 everything happens. And then we started dating, and then lockdown happened in March. We're like, fuck. So we could only go for walks and shit, and then it would be normal. We'd go back to being normal. And then, so during the time she broke up with me, it was actually a day before the big lockdown, one of the big, like, third or fourth lockdowns that only happened for like a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And so I was just like chilling with a friend, being like, fuck, I don't know what's going on. This is fucking shit. And then lockdown happened and I had to kind of sit with these ideas and these thoughts. And that's why I kind of created the project, the EP, because I was just sitting on these intrusive thoughts. But what about you? What about yourself? What happened in lockdown for you?
Oh, look, I found that for me, I am lucky because I have a steady partner of however long 2004 was.
Is it male or female?
It's male. Yeah, no, his name's Wesley.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, so I've been with Wesley for whatever 2004 was. So I think that's coming up.
That's great.
That's got to be 18 years this year.
Congratulations.
And so I think I found that people in couples or with families, right, had a different experience to single people, right? Like I have a few friends that are single and they were living by themselves and they seem to have a much, like a rough time.
Yeah.
But I think, I definitely went through struggles with, drinking too much was one thing that I found a lot of because I just wasn't, I didn't have commitments in the morning. It's like, okay, if I get out of my get out of bed into my PJs, I put the camera on, not on mute, but on turn the camera off. Yeah. And it's just like, oh yeah, cool. Just tick the attendance off.
Yeah.
But I think in much the same way that you started your EP, I started working on some collaborative stuff as well.
Dope.
And I found that it tested my commitment to the music industry too, because of course, when we were all trying to figure out whether there was going to be a music industry at all by the time this was all over, I questioned the value of paying however many tens of thousands of dollars to study a degree of music, of course.
Fair enough.
But I think most musicians will tell you that as much as they try to escape it, they keep on getting sucked in. You know what I mean? Like if I've definitely had breaks from music in my life.
Yep.
Always end up back. You know what I mean? Like,
well, the thing is, I will think there's always going to be music. Like there's always going to be like music. People love music more than ever, and you may be right that there may not be as many places to do gigs, to this and that. But there's always going to be people listening to music. So don't ever think that music's just going to go away or the industry's just going to float away, because there's always going to be a need for music. There may be an oversaturation, but that's a different story. Like, how do you cut away from the oversaturation? I agree, it's fucking hard. But I mean, just people wanting it, they're always going to want it. You look, every single period of time, there's always been a different type of music, back in the tribal days, back here, back wherever. And music is so key to people, like a lot of people, some people don't like music, but they're weirdos. Nah, I'm joking.
Well, on that note, we'll say goodbye to the weirdos and non-weirdos alike.
And non-weirdos.
Wise words about music always been there. I really agree with that. Thanks very much for coming on, man.
I'm happy
it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
I'll catch you around.